stop to think about how we feed everyone on this planet? It's a massive puzzle, right? A mix of biology, chemistry, and some seriously clever engineering. Well, today we're going to break down the science behind sustainable food production. Let's get right into it.
So, here's the game plan. We're going to start with the big picture, the sheer scale of the global food challenge. Then, we'll get into the basics, the blueprints for a harvest, you could say. After that, we'll explore some super smart farming techniques, touch on the role animals play, and finally, we'll even venture beyond the traditional fields to see what's out there.
All right, first things first, let's just try to wrap our heads around how enormous this task really is. I mean, we're talking about feeding every single person on Earth, every single day.
So, you might be asking, why is this such a big deal? It sounds simple, right? Grow food, eat food. But the answer, well, it involves some absolutely mind-boggling numbers and a concept that's just crucial for global stability.
Okay, to put this into perspective, let's just look at one country, India. We're talking about a population of over 1 billion people. A billion! Just try to picture that for a second. It's almost impossible, right? But feeding them isn't a thought experiment. It's a daily reality.
And what does it actually take to feed that many people? Get this, over 250 million tons of grain every single year. This really hammers home the challenge, doesn't it? We have to produce this colossal amount of food on land that's already limited and being used pretty intensively.
You know, the whole thing isn't just about growing enough food. It's about something called food security. And what that really means is two things have to be true. One, the food has to physically exist. And two, people have to be able to actually get it, to afford it. It's a two-part problem. You need both production and access.
Okay, so we've got a handle on the scale of the why. Now let's switch gears and look at the what, the actual building blocks of our food supply.
When you get right down to it, our diet is basically built on 3 pillars. You've got your cereals, wheat and rice for carbohydrates. That's our fuel. Then you have pulses like gram and peas for protein, which helps build our bodies. And finally, you have oil seeds like soybean, which give us those essential fats. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Nature's clock pretty much dictates everything. In a place like India, farming is split into 2 main seasons. You have the rainy Kharif season, which is perfect for thirsty crops like rice. And then you have the cooler, drier Rabi season, which is when things like wheat get grown.
And it's not just about rain and how hot or cold it is. It's also about sunlight. This thing called the photoperiod, which is really just the length of the day, is a super critical trigger for plants. It tells them when to grow and when to flower. Get that wrong? Too much or too little light, and poof, no harvest. It's this invisible force every farmer has to master.
So, given all these natural rules, how do we get more food out of the land we've got? This brings us to the really cool part. The actual techniques farmers use to squeeze out every bit of potential from their crops.
It really boils down to a simple but super powerful 3-step strategy. First, you start with the best possible seed you can find. Second, you nurture that plant while it's growing. And third, you have to protect the final harvest from anything and everything that wants to eat it before you do.
And that first step, choosing the right seed, is where something called hybridization comes in. This is where scientists basically play matchmaker for plants. They cross 2 different varieties to create a brand new one that has all the best traits. Maybe it's tougher against diseases, or maybe it just produces way more grain. This is a huge cornerstone of modern agriculture.
All right, let's talk about nurturing the crop. Just think of a plant's diet like our own. It needs the big stuff, the macronutrients, like nitrogen, in large amounts, that's like its main meal. But it also needs tiny, tiny amounts of micronutrients, like iron. Think of those as essential vitamins. If you miss either one, the plant just isn't going to thrive.
So to get those nutrients into the soil, farmers have 2 main choices. They can go the organic route with manure, which is fantastic for building healthy soil over the long haul, or they can use chemical fertilizers for a quick, targeted shot of specific nutrients. The catch with fertilizers, though, is you have to be really careful to avoid environmental problems, like having them wash into rivers.
Farmers also use some pretty clever planting patterns. Mixed cropping is kind of like diversifying an investment portfolio. You plant 2 crops together, so if one fails, hey, the other one might pull through. It's like an insurance policy. Intercropping is a bit more strategic. You plant in specific rows, so different plants aren't fighting each other for the same food in the soil.
And don't forget that third step, protection. The job isn't over once the harvest is in. You've got biotic threats, that's living things like insects, rodents, and fungi, and then you have abiotic threats, like too much moisture or heat. Both can absolutely ruin all that hard work.
Of course, food isn't just about what we grow from the ground. So let's widen our lens a bit and talk about animal husbandry and how it fits into the whole food system.
For literally centuries, cattle have been the ultimate multitaskers in agriculture. You have milk animals, which are raised for their milk, and you have draft animals, which provided the pure muscle power for farming. Now, tractors have replaced draft animals in a lot of places, but their role in the story of food is just immense. Poultry farming, on the other hand, has become incredibly specialized. It's really split into two very different paths. You have broilers, which are bred to grow super fast for meat, and then you have layers, which are bred specifically to produce a ton of eggs. This kind of specialization is a huge reason why chicken and eggs are so affordable and available all over the world.
All right, for our final section, let's step off the farm and look beyond the fields. We're going to explore some really innovative food systems that work in completely different environments, from ponds to beehives.
This is just a brilliant example of efficiency. With composite fish culture, you're essentially creating a multi-level ecosystem in one pond. You put in fish that feed at the top, others that feed in the middle, and some that are bottom feeders. They aren't competing for food at all. It's like a perfectly designed aquatic apartment building where everyone has their own floor. You maximize the protein you get from a single body of water.
And what about bees? This is so cool. The quality, the flavor, everything about honey comes down to something called pasturage. It's simply the specific mix of flowers the bees have access to. A different menu of flowers means different tasting honey. But here's the magic. It's a two-way street. Those flowers depend on the bees to pollinate them. So these little workers aren't just making honey. They're critical partners in growing many of the crops we've been talking about.
So, there you have it. From the genetics in a tiny seed to the health of the soil, from managing entire ecosystems to protecting the harvest, feeding our world is this incredibly complex web of choices. As we look ahead, with a growing population and resources that are, well, finite, the big question is, where do we focus our efforts? Is it all about better seeds, smarter water use, or something else entirely? It's a puzzle we all have a stake in solving.